Okay, looks like everything's good. Oh shit, I forgot to fucking change the title. Oops.
That was like my best debate performance.
Yeah, I know,
also,
and
Mike,
I ruined it for you.
Mike, really quickly.
Yeah.
I've noticed on a... No. Like I've noticed on like a lot of our streams that like my volume is lower than everybody else's.
Do you want me?
I'm on a laptop now. Like, would you be able to make sure that like I'm like
yeah. Hang on a second. I'm gonna make sure. I'm gonna fix the volume for everybody.
Too, like whenever I was on the stream, like mine was quiet.
Okay, so I'm gonna make sure that
just make mine the loudest. That's
okay. Here, let me just. All right, I'm gonna raise everybody's up.
The best way to be the loudest is to like have is to be like omniscient. It's like have the most knowledge. Knowledge is our discipline.
All right, James, how you sounding? Let me. Oh.
Hello. Do I sound good?
Okay, no, yeah. I just want to make sure that I want to make sure people can hear you. That's all. Okay. All right. And if something happens, I can always.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Perfect. Yeah, I can hear you good. Okay, so you managed to get a laptop, huh, David?
I did. I don't have like the webcam calibrated to my specifications.
Okay.
But I extremely have a laptop right now. It is an absolute lap and a top. So yeah, we're streaming this way, homie.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, give me.
I'm pasting the. No, damn it.
See how the stream sounds really fast. Oh, so yeah, I hope you guys weren't waiting too long for me. Apologies.
It was like an hour.
No, it wasn't. Don't fucking lie to me. Fuck you. Fuck you.
No, it was. Like I've been here since like 5:20.
David, are you telling me that you were like in here like around since like 5 o'clock, just waiting around?
No, it's 6:20 now, and like we were hanging out like at like 5:30 or something.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Your time.
Oh, my time.
Like I know everything about Ross now, and it, yeah, like we exchanged browser histories. Like we have nothing to hide anymore.
Oh, okay. So you both have the nuclear options now.
Against each other, like that's how much we trust each other.
Okay, I guess I just need to turn
we
myself
trust each
down.
other with our porn history.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's always good. Is there an understanding if something were to happen to either you, the other has to delete the browser history?
No, we both passed the period.
Okay. All right.
No Vosh in the last 24 hours.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Okay. Well,
no horsepower.
Everything looks to be good. And I'm getting, so far it hasn't crapped out on me. So what I did apparently worked. So thank goodness for that. Or did I speak too soon? Because I can't load the chat. Oh, there we go. It's just taking a while. Okay, well, Oliver, say hi, Oliver. Oliver, say something in the chat. Say hi. I want to say something in the chat with you, Oliver. Hi, Oliver. I spelled your name wrong. Sorry. Okay. Okay, cool. Everything's working. Okay, cool. Oliver? Does everything look okay? Just let me know. I mean, you're gonna be like my technical support like last time. I really don't want that mistake to happen like before. So, I mean, basically, you can't get any more podcasty than like 4 white people just like chit chatting about bullshit. So, whew, okay, cool. So
only half of this argument.
Okay, well, okay, so look, how do we want to do this? Like, I know that we all agreed for.
Yeah, because we were just talking about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go on. What do you want to do, Ross?
Well, when we, like, me and James, the way we prepared, we mixed in both of the questions. I know that might have not been the specifics of what I said we would do. I mean, I didn't say specifically we'd have 2 debates, but maybe I did. But I wasn't thinking that.
You did. This is what got Trotsky killed. I want to make this like public record.
Yeah.
This kind of mischief, this orc mischief, as Gimli said, absolute ML mischief.
Well, I mean, I think part of it is like we see a lot of these questions kind of intermixed. I know you guys probably see it intermixed a little bit too, but we were trying to reconcile how do we do that. I mean, I assume we're going to still read out things.
I mean, that's fine. I figured it as much. It's kind of like, it's all kind of like formed into one. So no, I get it. That's fine. And David, Oliver wants to let you know that his soup turned out good. You making soup? What kind of soup, Oliver?
What kind of soup?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Is it Panera soup?
Is it? Did you have a lemonade with it?
Is it soup of the proletariat?
Yeah.
Butternut squash soup.
If it does, that's Oliver like is already fully capable of making my heart. If he spiked it with Panera caffeination, then I'm dead on arrival, and I may as well exit this conversation immediately.
It's a Panera copycat recipe of chicken wild rice. Ooh, yummy. All right. Okay. Well. Okay. So that's fine. Like it's the 2 topics are kind of like one big argument. That's fine. Okay. I'm okay with that. But I don't think we decided on who wanted to start. I mean, I don't really care if you guys if you 2 want to start, go for it. Or I guess I should probably say, do you want like one person on your side go and then one person on our side go and then, back? Yeah. Like that.
We can do that. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. How about we go second and fourth and then you guys go third?
First and third?
Oh. No.
Okay.
I want to go last.
Okay, so David wants to go
last.
So can we do second and fourth, please?
Let's do it.
Do we have to do a coin toss? Do we have to do a coin toss for this? I'll do a coin toss for this. I have a dime.
We could do a coin toss.
I have a coin here.
Hey, I'm not going to let these Marxist-Leninists commandeer this shit, all right, as anarchists. It's not going to happen again, all right?
Do you want to call?
This is not going to be Catalonia all over again, all right? We're doing things differently on this train.
Okay.
We learn from our mistakes.
Wait. So if you get whatever you call, we'll do it your way. Okay, so call it, right. And I will flip it.
Heads.
Doing it my way is that's a missionary position.
That's so boring.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay, I'll flip it and then. Okay, what did you write it down? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna flip it. 3, 2, 1. That's charming. I made a little.
Yeah, I heard it.
I'm gonna take a picture of it and send it in.
You really don't have to do that. We can go on an honor system
this is so
here.
Drawn out.
It's totally fine, Ross.
Okay.
I'm going last.
Okay, whatever.
I'm having fun with you guys. What did you get, Ross? What's the coin flip? I trust you, buddy.
It says heads.
Okay, I called heads.
What does that mean?
I called heads. So,
well, what did you guess?
I guess decide on terms.
I guess heads that we and David would go 2 and 4. Yeah.
Okay, you go. We'll let you do whatever you want.
Okay.
Even if this is a power move, I'll allow it.
It's not a power move.
It's not a power move.
You said it was heads.
This is your Marxist-Leninist side coming out.
You said it was heads. I called heads, so we went with go.
Okay.
This is what's wrong with all of you Marxist-Leninists. It's not just about power. It's not just about who has deciding power. It's about what fucking works. Okay.
It's about who gets the last word. All right.
So
you. That's not what if I have the last word and I say 2 + 2 = 5, I'm still wrong. Doesn't matter who has last word.
Okay, so just for anybody who is tuning in and asking what what the premise is here. So basically, it is how would we word this? Voting next year. The I guess generally the how would I word this? The necessity to vote next year, as well as the utility of political violence in this country in this day of age. Is that a good way to generalize it? The discussion.
We already defined violence. Just said, yeah,
that's about as
general
binary as a political discussion. Yeah, we'll do it. Binary though too.
We also defined violence as bodily harm, violence against property or destruction of property, and what was the third thing? The threat of force, the threat of violence.
Okay.
That superimposes onto my research. So go ahead, guys. Have fun.
So who's going first?
Well, what
either you or Ross.
You or Ross, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I can go first. Bear with me because I am sick and I have a mouthful here.
Oh.
All right. It has been clear for some time now that the climate goals set out by the Paris Agreement and Kyoto Protocol have not been met. Furthermore, more recent attempts at climate reform, such as the Green New Deal, a modest reform in and of itself, has only managed to push politicians like Biden or Hillary Clinton to pay more lip service to climate change, while approving more and more oil drilling expansion, pushing for more war, and promoting band-aid solutions that create waste and still require the use of fossil fuels in the production process, such as electric vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines, etc. Capitalist governments around the world have been unable to pass legislation to seriously combat climate change because it would require intervening in the market and potentially hurting fossil fuel companies. To make matters worse, fossil fuel companies have taken the reins when it comes to deciding what steps are to be taken towards climate change. At COP28, a climate conference that Biden did not even attend, the president of the conference was an oil executive. Despite once again promising to reduce carbon emissions, a promise that has been made repeatedly by quote-unquote progressive bourgeoisie for many years now, the president of COP28 is planning a $150 billion oil and gas expansion. While there are also increasing amounts of solar panels being implemented around the world, as well as a shift to electric vehicles, these alternatives still require resources such as lithium and cobalt, which still must be mined in the third world countries where there are very little to no environmental regulations. This means there will remain a dependency on the global south to provide raw materials for the global north to transition from fossil fuels, and the global south will be unable to reap the benefits of green technology due to the capitalists being dependent on their cheap labor and lack of environmental regulation. Sorry.
It's all good.
Which is necessary for them to extract massive amounts of lithium and cobalt for very low prices. But this leads to an even bigger problem. As climate change continues to get worse and exacerbate natural disasters in the third world, we are experiencing the beginning of what will be one of the greatest refugee crises in history. Massive amounts of immigrants have been flooding the border for some time now, and while Democrats have been in office, not only has there been no change in the response, but the Democrats recently agreed to increase border security in exchange for being able to send foreign aid to Israel. And this is all the while the Congress has been showing bipartisan support for censoring and punishing what they consider hate speech against Israel, with even quote-unquote progressive Democrats, such as AOC, voting in favor and being primaried as a result of her own actions. Speaking of primaries, the Democratic primary was recently shut down in Florida to make sure that only Biden would be on the ballot. And in states where Biden did not get on the primary ballot, such as New Hampshire, the Democratic National Committee has been urging voters to either write in Biden or not vote. To ignore all the other instances in the past of Democrats capitulating and promoting policies which lay the groundwork for fascism, the most recent actions of silencing dissent, shutting out campaign rivals, tightening borders, locking up anarchists for domestic terrorism, increasing police budgets, further militarizing police, trying to disarm the masses, and pushing for more and more war have brought us dangerously more close than we goddamn than we have been in a long time. Yet there are leftist organizations who support voting for the Democrats or even believe in working closely and allying with the Democratic Party as a quote-unquote progressive force against fascism. History has shown that allying with liberals against fascism has not bore great results. Oftentimes, liberals capitulate to the fascists or try to make peace with them, allowing them to take power. And even when popular front governments have been formed, communists are usually purged once they have outlived their usefulness. An American example would be the New Deal, originally opposed but later pushed for by communists and later labor organizers who allied with the liberal bourgeoisie during World War II, only to be purged and pushed into hiding afterwards during the Red Scare. Most workers, then placated with the results of the New Deal, were no longer pressured to fight for revolution. This also demonstrates that reforms serve as a useful tool by the ruling class in times of crises to stop revolutionary momentum momentarily. When they are pressured to make concessions/reforms, these reforms and institutions that are created have a dual nature. While providing some relief or satisfaction to the working class, they also serve to maintain and preserve the overall system of profit, thereby making it the interest of the ruling class to implement such reforms when necessary, because if they didn't, they would risk facing much greater problems from the working class, such as revolution. Just because most reforms are usually passed reluctantly with some expense to the capitalists does not mean that they don't realize that it is still in their interest to pass them. But similarly, just because reforms provide some relief to the workers does not mean that they don't also suffer from these reforms. First of all, the reforms often mean simply making the toil of the worker more bearable for the time being, so that they will continue to bear their burden and go on being exploited by the capitalists. Second of all, the reforms are usually never substantial enough to provide long-term relief, and oftentimes reforms are even undone after a certain amount of time. Take, for example, again, the New Deal, as well as the expansion of the welfare state during the Civil Rights era. Most of those reforms have outlived their usefulness to the ruling class, and now the only thing we have left is the bare minimum. We'll be lucky if we don't see Social Security crumble within our lifetimes. Another way that reforms cause workers to suffer is that most reforms passed today simply shift suffering from one group of workers to another. Most bills today are written by lobbyists, and oftentimes certain reforms passed in these bills are used as a cover for other things which actually hurt the working class. For example, a bill may be passed which calls for an increase in minimum wage. However, that same bill may call for billions of dollars to be sent to the military to fund war, or it may be spent on militarizing the police or tax cuts for the rich. And this is not even taking into account the fact that our system of lateral checks and balances serve as a way to slow down the process of passing reforms. It is also important to note that most of what I have been talking about up to this point has been in regard to electoral reform. And when we talk about reforms, we specifically mean electoralism, because we of course still believe in fighting for reforms via union organizing and other forms of militant grassroots struggle. Although those reforms often just serve as a byproduct of revolutionary organizing, and the goal of doing this should be to win workers to revolutionary politics, not for the purpose of reform by itself. Sorry, that was a mouthful.
It literally has nothing to do with violent forms of political action.
Well, like I said, we mixed in the topic.
So you didn't just mix in; you completely excluded.
Well, maybe Ross will take care of that.
I think mine had more to do do with the other aspect, which was like voting for the Democrats.
That's okay.
I think we can.
Oh God! Or this is like some oh, hold on. I have a different theory. Okay, Ross, go for it, buddy.
No, I think it's.
I'll wait.
Let's do the opening statements, then we can
David,
have more of a free talk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Ross.
David, do you want to go last? Do you want me to go next?
Your turn, Mike, right? You want to go, and then I'll go. Then
yeah, I'm like, David, do you really want to go last as well?
I'll go last. That's fine.
All right. the best is last. Okay, I'll go next.
I'll go last.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to. I'm not as prepared as James was with his speech, so I'll probably be a lot more quick as a result. So I don't know. So how do I start this? So do you guys watch? You guys ever watch The Handmaid's Tale? I mean, I'm not saying it's a great show, but there is, when thinking about this topic, I remember recalling one scene. I think it was like,
Mike.
What? Yeah. What? Hello? Is there something wrong? Am I muted?
Is there a crazy delay right now?
I don't know what's going on. Somebody said my name. Should I stop? What?
Hello?
Hello?
Is there like
I don't know. Ross and James are both muted, so I don't know what's going on. Okay, there's James. All right.
I think everything's fine. Let's all mute except Mike.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. So I take it even though you're muted, you all can hear me still, but okay. I'll just start from the beginning. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you guys seen Handmaid's Tale? It's an okay show. I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, but thinking about this subject made me think about a particular episode. I think it was season 3. I'll spare you the details, but basically, I don't know if you know The Handmaid's Tale. It's it surrounds a story of a woman named June who is basically used as chattel slavery in terms of baby making, essentially, and she's trying to make an uprising out of this oppressive theocratic fascist state, and she is allied with a commander, official government person in the government of Gilead, in trying to do that because he has his own objectives. And they have a very abrasive relationship at first. So the commander, whose name is Lawrence, decides he's had enough with, her very high principled morals, and decides to let her get her hands dirty and make her understand that these things are far more complex than she's giving it. So he takes her down to a warehouse where a bunch of women are being jailed in, basically corralled in. They're bound to be shipped off to these like death camp colonies where they die from radiation or something like that. And he has a binder, has a list of women and of all the women there, and they have listed past professions before the nation of Gilead took power. And he tells June, look, you can pick 5, but you can only pick 5. And unfortunately, the rest are going to have to go. June, of course, doesn't see the rationality or morality in this. And she obviously objects. But Lawrence retorts that, they will die anyway, even if she doesn't choose. So when she replies that that's not her responsibility for their deaths, he simply replies again that is really just a technical distinction that doesn't really matter, especially for the people who are going to die. That's kind of the point that I really need to make about this in terms of electoralism. It's not really it's not a be all ends all, but at best it's a means to an end. Like sometimes what you want and the reality of what you have are two different things, and people only see who they can save in the moment rather than understanding that more can be saved later on by, in my opinion, being more pragmatic in their politics. I guess I also want to dispense this notion that I don't want this debate to become a pro-Biden versus anti-Biden discussion. I think it's fair to say all 4 of us here have our plenty of criticisms we have to old man Joe here, and I don't want David and our position on voting for Joe Biden, meaning that we 100% endorse him and everything that he's done, because that is, I don't want to speak too much on David's behalf, but I want to say that's too far from the truth. I've had plenty of criticisms of Biden. It's just the alternative for me seems to be always worse. I mentioned climate. I heard climate control, and I'm glad that was brought up because I think there's some moral questions I think we need to address, and I hope we're able to address them. But like, I understand that there's been a lot of shortcomings, especially in getting climate change policies passed in government. But would it be better or worse, or should I say, does exacerbating civil and international conflict around the world exacerbate climate change as a response? I mean, is that better or worse for the planet? And does allowing more pro-fossil fuel candidates like the Republicans in power benefit the climate, not just for the country, but for the world as a whole? In terms of, addressing the whole primary deal, I think there's a big mistake that's being talked about when it comes to presidential primary elections, and that is they're not always necessary. For instance, in 2020, there wasn't a Republican primary, not really an official one, because for the Republicans, Trump was their guy. He was not only the president of the United States, but he was also the head of their party. The same is being said now for the Democrats with Joe Biden. Not to mention the fact that any alternatives that I've seen are pretty lackluster to begin with. I mean, Marianne Williamson is running basically a protest candidacy that's not very serious, and you guys can read the letters by her staffers to conclude that. And is Cornel West picked a party now, or is he running an independent? He keeps changing his mind on things, and then of course there's that joke Robert Kennedy Jr. I hope people don't want to defend primary so he gets a chance to run. I think we need to kind of have a realistic framing here. We all have to agree on. There is going to be one of two people that are going to be president of the United States come the beginning of 2025. And we all need to agree on who those two people have the best chance to be that president. I guess... Well, how else can I conclude this? Historical precedent to electoralism? Well, I know Germany was brought up, but I'm also going to refer to Germany because it was the German communists' refusal to form a coalition with the Social Democrats against the Nazis, which allowed the Nazis to take power to begin with. And they knew they fucked up because when they wanted to make a coalition, it was too late. Hitler had power, the Reichstag fire decree was made, and the communists were rounded up, and they were the first to go. I mean, we have concerns about, being purged by liberals when, we are going to be probably the first victims under a fascist government. So I see no true moral distinction in terms of how we're going to be safer. I would always pledge my lot with the people who are lackluster liberals than the diehard fascists that basically get hard-ons at our destruction. In terms of political violence, I'll say this much. I think David's probably going to cover this more, but
yeah.
But I'll just wrap it up by this, because I feel like I've been kind of rambling on a bit. But do you guys remember? So there's a guy that actually just happened. He just got famous. He's trending right now. The guy basically rejecting the question: would you prefer economic, prosperity or LGBTQ rights? And the guy's like, I like both. He's like, no, you have to choose. He's like, no, I reject that premise. I take both. I look at the situation between electoralism and doing things to other methods to enhance the socialist agenda to not be a zero-sum game in that matter. I believe you can do both. I'm a pragmatist in the sense that I feel like we should be able to use all the tools in our basket, our little tool bag, and I don't think that we should have to make sacrifices or be stringent in terms of ideological purity. So in terms of that and violence, I mean, Has anyone ever considered the implications if political violence didn't go your way? And have you thought about the consequences of opening that Pandora's box? I mean, think of January 6th, for example, when that thing fucking failed. Look what happened. The National Guardsmen basically surrounded every government building. There were barricades set up. It was kind of a scary sight, not a very appealing sight if you were trying to promote a democracy. But I mean, that's the consequences of what's going to happen. It's the state is going to stamp down harder. And you think that, should you fail, are you going to be in a worse situation or a better situation? And then, I mean, talk of violence, I mean, in the theoretical sense, can sound engaging, but there's a human element that I would like people to not, distance themselves from. Like, how often would you picture yourself as a victim or casualty of that violence? So, revolution's not a dinner party, but it's also not something to be, talked about, nonchalantly and in such a callous manner where you disregard like the serious implications of those actions. And I'll leave it at that. Woo. All right. Was that 6 minutes? I wasn't timing myself. I hope I didn't go over.
Okay.
Ross, you're next.
Yep. You got me.
Hang on, Ross. Let me turn you up just a
No,
little bit.
you're all good.
Okay,
you're all good.
Just make sure you're speaking into your microphone because I want to make sure people...
Your audio could have been a smidge better, but everything was fine.
Oh, me? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll make sure I turn myself up then. I apologize. Oh,
okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly, yes.
I can hear Ross, and that's what's important right now. So, Ross, what do you have to say?
Floor is yours.
All significant gains for the working class are either from the direct results of a revolution or placating the workers out of fear of losing their property through violence. The land redivision in the USSR was the largest in the world until the landlord extermination by the Chinese Communist Revolution. In nations like Communist Albania, Communist Bulgaria, and the USSR under Stalin, there was no homelessness. The Soviets taught people to read and gave people electricity at a speed that had never been seen before. According to the book Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism by Kristen Godsey, the reason divorce reforms and governmental early childhood education programs like Head Start were created was because of the precedent set by and competition with the USSR's advancement in women's emancipation with their free childcare facilities and divorce rights. Also, the Eastern Bloc led the research in female sexual anatomy with conferences on the female orgasm in communist Poland in the 1950s. It is because of the Cuban Revolution that Cuba has a higher life expectancy than the USA, with much less resources. It was the riots in France that prevented the retirement age from increasing 2 years. It was the George Floyd riots that put Derek Chauvin in prison. It was the Stonewall riots that made the police avoid the gay bars and started the gay liberation movement. Because violence cannot be ignored by the ruling class and their cronies. The 1969 Stonewall riots violence cannot be hidden from the masses in the same way the clinics and sexology research in the Weimar Republic could be. There was at least a struggle. This leads me to another point. We are not just going through a genocide of Palestinians. We are on a precipice of a trans genocide, for the lack of better word. This notion of grooming parallels blood libel accusations of the Jews in the 1930s, 20s, and 30s. This genocide can only be stopped with violence and not by reform. When conservatives organize in militias and say they are going to kill queer people and leftists, I take them at their word. The legislation is secondary. I call on comrades, especially minorities, to organize with militancy. Join a militant organization like the Progressive Labor Party. All of the major reforms within capitalism were to prevent workers from taking back their surplus value. It was explicitly stated in the Marshall Plan that it was to prevent the spread of communism, which was spreading violently. There was the Red Army spreading it in the East, the Greek Civil War with the communists fighting the fascists there, and the 100,000 communist armed partisans in Italy ready to throw down. The Birmingham riots of '63 was a pivotal event that caused President Kennedy's decision to propose a major civil rights bill. It was ultimately passed under President Johnson as the Civil Rights Act, and this was because of riots. We don't believe in helping our enemies help people, which is just propaganda for their genocidal agendas or to obfuscate their genocidal agenda. Just like the SA giving out free food to Germans in the name of the Nazi Party. I'm not going to help the Catholic Church help people. The Great Society obfuscated the Vietnam War. The allegedly pro-labor Biden government obfuscates from the mass and brutal deportation of Haitians, the inflation caused by the ruling class, and the genocide of the Palestinians. We are not utilitarians. We aren't concerned with capitalist dilemmas. We are concerned with the ultimate dilemma of how to get rid of capitalist dilemmas. We don't believe in making this compromise between finding the acceptable ratio between hospitals bombed and hospitals built. We believe in institutional independence and not being beholden to the Democrats. We should criticize them ruthlessly and in proportion to their crimes they commit against the working class, not cower away from criticizing the Squad and other Democrats. People respect this integrity. When you get elected, it is harder to advocate for revolution and thus be honest with its necessity. Some say it is impossible to organize within the military. But many aren't paid very well, under $30,000 a year. In times of crisis, this makes many soldiers receptive to communist vision. There have been militaries that have revolted before the German. A good example of this is the German military in World War I and the Russian military in World War I, which were notoriously conservative. Like all of the Russian generals were forced to read the Protocols of Zion and had their soldiers read it. Also, look into the history of fragging during the Vietnam War. There was over 1,000 incidences of fragging. Drafts radicalize people pretty quickly, which is, the draft is rising all over the world. There is never adequate care for veterans, and this has a radicalizing effect too. When bureaucrats and even unions get higher wages for workers or better environmental protection policies, capitalists never take a cut to their profits sitting down. Misery is just shifted around. The capitalist moves to the third world. They cut wages earlier in the supply chain. They hire the undocumented, the prisoners, and exploit every loophole in the labor code. It's designed to be exploited because it is the capitalists who create these laws in the first place through campaign finance, insider trading, and the revolving door. The state is an instrument of class domination. It doesn't act independent of class violence, a class conflict. And the last thing, just to counteract somebody who will take a study that says, an academic study that will say, statistically, there's never been a violent revolution. For simplicity purposes, what if the spilling of ruling class blood was directly proportional to human liberation, and it could be proven formally? Would academia acknowledge it? No, because taking it seriously would be treason. So I'll end there, and I'll let it go on to David.
Mr. Donovan.
Thank you.
And that is me as hell.
Go ahead, David.
And we're going to talk about this for a minute. So our friend James was willing to bring up climate change as an imperative, a moral imperative for how things have to be going. Hello. Am I on a delay?
No, I don't think you're on a delay.
Are we good?
You're good. Yeah.
Am I audible?
I hear you fine. Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. I suspect that it might be Mike who is on the delay.
Fantastico. Okay, so if we're basically trying to understand this as far as proportionality with climate change is concerned, I'm going to remind both of you right now who are clearly arguing for the wrong position that Donald Trump took us out of the Paris Climate Agreement and that he basically condoned things like the Dakota Access Pipeline, which are things that both Biden and Obama were vehemently trying to oppose. for the sake of mitigating climate change and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to effective forms of revolutionary political action, we can LARP about the Haitian Revolution as much as we want to. We can LARP about the Russian Revolution as much as we want to. When it comes to successful forms of revolutionary politics, 53% of rigorous and protracted civil disobedience movements work. 26% of violent uprisings work when it comes to usurping the government, the incumbent government, and replacing that government with what we would want it to be. And the reason why I think that percentages are important when it comes to evaluating is that I'm less concerned with what feels like LARPy role-playing leftism, which is fetishizing the Haitian government or the Haitian Revolution. I'm less concerned with fetishizing the Bolsheviks in the 1920s. I'm more concerned with which methodologies create better outcomes in the modern political era. And if you're thinking about what actually works, armed uprisings literally have a 0% success rate when it comes to usurping the incumbent government, when it comes to maintaining democracy, even in the workplace, and breaking the back of the 1%. And what I want you guys to think about is to superimpose some of these statistics onto what would be efficacious for, immunization rates. Say you had a vaccine that was 53% effective. I'm going to make the comparison. When it comes to nonviolent uprisings that challenge institutions, those uprisings have a 53% success rate. When it comes to violent uprisings, armed or otherwise, those uprisings have, a 26% success rate or a 0% success rate if they're also trying to maintain a democracy. Say that somebody you knew had fallen victim to an illness that required immunization. Would you rather give that person the vaccination that had a 53% guarantee or a 26% guarantee? Because we cannot superimpose the revolutionary politics of the Haitian Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution on modern forms of revolution and expect them to have the same outcome. And I think one of the earliest indications of this was the revolution in El Salvador, where, people in El Salvador tried to have a militant uprising against their incumbent government. And because post-World War II, there was naval supremacy and air supremacy, the proletariat had literally no means of sufficiently challenging the government there. Since then, it's only gotten worse. So when I hear Marxist-Leninists LARP about the Haitian Revolution, LARP about the Russian Revolution, all I hear is a capitulation to failure. All I hear are people deferring to things that are empirically unsustainable, things that are empirically falsifiable, to things that are empirically anti-historical. There is no precedent for what you guys want actually working. There's no precedent for what you guys actually want leading to the outcomes that are necessary for human beings. If you guys want socialism to persevere, then you will oppose what you guys have been supporting in this conversation, because the things that you guys want to be successful are things that fail. And that's been the case in the 20th and 21st centuries on a basis of empirical evidence. This empirical evidence has been accumulated by Erica Chenoweth, who evaluated the success rates of different forms of revolutionary politics throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. Erica Chenoweth literally examined and analyzed 323 revolutionary movements throughout those centuries and decades. And what they determined was that the violent form of political uprising cannot be superimposed onto modern politics and succeed, mostly because post-World War II, our incumbent governments have a monopoly of power against the proletariat. And that kind of fucking sucks. But that's kind of also fucking the reality. And that means that we have to navigate our form of revolutionary politics in accordance with that reality. And so, essentially, what James said about the climate situation does not survive scrutiny. And what Ross said about violent forms of revolutionary political action also does not survive scrutiny on a purely empirical basis. And this is based on the research of people who know much better than we do. And I would like to open this discussion up to everybody who may disagree with me.
Okay.
You want to go first, Ross, or shall I?
You go first.
Well, I think it's important that we kind of refer back to what Ross said, which is that, if such a study were to actually say that violent revolution actually showed success, would something like that actually be published by academia? And the likely answer is no. Because
here's the thing: who do you think this study was published by?
Who was it?
Erica Chenoweth, a non-binary political actor who's been subjugated and oppressed by the political elites, you could say. So what kind of conspiracy needs to exist for this person's conclusions to be illegitimate? You tell me.
I think there's wider. I guess what I would say is that there are systemic ways that academia fails, and she's not above publishing things for the purposes of publishing.
First of all, they are not above that.
Yeah.
Who are they too? You know that better.
They are not above publishing for the purposes of publishing things. So I also would say that
do you have information that better confirms the percentages of success rates for violent revolutions?
Can we let Ross finish, please?
Yeah.
What is considered successful is highly an ideological conversation.
Here's the thing.
I would say the Sandinistas, which is long after World War II, was successful. Or
here's the thing. When it comes, I'm sorry, please continue.
A modern military government. A modern military army. I think it's important to talk about the actual organizing within the military, because that's what really matters. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't. At the same time, here's the thing. When it comes to the I guess you could say the mobilization of the proletariat, 26%, I believe it was 26%. Let me double check this. I want to be very, very particular with you guys. Yeah. 26% of violent uprisings work when it comes to usurping the incumbent government. That would include recent revolutionary political actions like what we saw in Tunisia. That would include things like what we saw in Cuba in the 1950s. But here's the thing. 53% of rigorous and protracted civil disobedience movements work. And those are movements that do not incorporate armed uprisings into their form of revolutionary usurpation. So let's pretend for a second that these are vaccination rates for immunization. Would you rather accept an inoculation that has a 53% success rate or a 26% success rate?
Well, I don't think we should turn it into a moral dilemma, because
it's not a moral dilemma. It's a statistical situation.
Communism, just because an incumbent government is deposed does not mean that the government that comes after that is one that works in the interests of the ruling class. So you could easily just say you could give that person, the vaccine, and then maybe they have a violent reaction to it and die anyways,
What if I told you that those percentages actually accounted for that?
The way that you implement yourselves in the mass movements and win people to revolutionary politics, it's very important to win the masses to understanding things through the lens of dialectical materialism and winning them to communism.
Hang on.
Here's the thing. What if I told you guys
that study has
in order to crystallize these percentages?
Hang on. Hold on.
Shut up. I'm trying to finish.
Hold on. Just let him talk.
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
Are we telling each other to shut up?
Yeah, because you've been talking over people this entire fucking time. Your study included 300 fucking revolutions. How many of those were color revolutions? How many of those were sponsored by the CIA? Sure, it includes Cuba and others, but
here's the thing. Can you tell me? All right, here's an indication. Can you tell me how much of the South Korean Revolution in the 1980s was sponsored by the CIA?
That wasn't a revolution.
I'm sure that there was.
Are you literally speculating and inventing scenarios in a desperate attempt to discredit what I have to say about this?
I think one thing that we should understand is how hard it is.
Wait, Ross, you're going to swoop in for a second.
Yeah.
I'm asking James a question. Are you trying to discredit what I said? James, you're going to listen to me for a second. Okay. Are you trying to discredit what I said by saying that the FBI interfered with the South Korean Revolution in the 1980s? James, take it away, buddy.
Or the CIA? Is that what you meant?
Can you confirm that?
I'm just saying that's 300 depositions of incumbent governments. We would have to go through each one of those and see.
I can tell you what happened in the 1980s with that revolution if you want me to, and none of it had to do with the FBI.
One thing I think that's very important
is you're talking about a study that has 300 revolutions.
It's
323 revolutionary moves from Erica Chenoweth. You can also confirm these things separately from her accounts of these things. There are independent groups that corroborate this information.
One thing that I think is important is to understand it's very hard to isolate variables in when we're talking about politics. And so you can have a violent movement that coincides with a non-violent movement, but then the ruling class actually allows the non-violent movement to be successful.
But here's the thing: there are also times when the violent movement,
in the time of genocide and fucking climate disaster, in the name of preventing people from actually working to make meaningful change.
All right,
here's the thing, though. There are times when the violent movement actually undermines the progress that
falling for bread and circus. That's what I'm trying to say.
I know this is going to sound kind of off topic for a second, but David, could you send me the link to that study so I can put it in the chat?
I would also look
so people can see it. Am I seriously delayed? Do I have to rejoin? Is it my bad? Oh, Jesus. Am I really delayed? Is it? I gotta be serious. Am I delayed? Is this what's fucking up the discussion?
Which study? No, Mike. Which study do you?
Study in the chat. This is also a very important study.
I think you do.
No, that's not what's fucking up the discussion, Mike. Which study do you want?
The one that you're talking about with the success rates of violent revolutions and stuff like that. Because I want to share it in the chat for the viewers so they can have a context of what's going on. Hang on, don't say anything. I'm gonna leave the call really fast and rejoin. Okay, so because the people are not gonna see on the stream. Okay, so don't get all
also
jumpy.
Share the study that I put in.
Yeah, share that too, Ross. I'll share them both. All right, just give me a second, guys. Hang on.
Okay. Well.
One moment, guys. I'm so sorry. Let me join in. I think my Discord is delayed. Let me just rejoin. Here, I'm gonna share these. I'm gonna share these links to you guys so you guys can know what we're talking about. This is David's link about his argument, and I will just share the other one really fast. Oh, that's great. The thing's not working. Okay. Wonderful. All right, just give me. All right, I'll share that in a minute. Let me just rejoin the call. One moment. I'm probably going to have to restart my whole Discord. I apologize, guys.
Fishing doesn't matter.
Interminably, because
What did I say
you have
about
a Marxist
fighting?
Leninist worldview.
What did I say about
That
fighting when I was
that is
gone?
not.
Like, I'm
What?
saying that the way that they define success is wrong. Like, I guarantee you that she probably had a liberal mindset. Like, just because somebody claims to be a socialist, that doesn't mean they are, or that they're non-binary.
No, this is not through like a capitalist or like a socialist framework. This is literally about which revolutionary movements were able to like overthrow the incumbent government.
James, what did I
Successfully.
miss?
Right.
It's not about like whether or not it amounts to capitalism.
What? Okay. All right. Before,
Sorry, do we want to
I don't
fill
mean,
my
I don't
mic
mean
in?
to. I don't mean to break up this, but I just want to clarify. Am I delayed still? For the love of God, someone please tell me.
I don't
It's
think so.
hard to tell.
Okay. Okay. I don't know what the fuck was going on with my Discord, so I'm sure it was that. But again, I apologize. But I think
I'm
it
going to
was
leave at 11, though.
okay.
So in 40 minutes, I'm going to leave.
Okay. All right. So what were we talking about? We're live again. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're doing all this. So what were we what was this about the study, about how, it's too bourgeois basically?
Oh,
How long were we not live?
No, we've been live this
Did we
whole
go
time.
off
I just
live
said
for a little bit?
they couldn't
No,
hear.
there were two things that...
Yeah. We're live again. That's why I said don't fight, because I have to leave the
understand how you
Discord
can
call.
isolate variables.
Go ahead, Ross.
Okay.
But here's the thing, Michael, is that like we can disagree, but like I can still love Ross.
Exactly. I agree.
That's the thing.
I'm a
I
very
just met
charming
James and I
motherfucker,
already love
so-
him. It's okay.
Same.
Maybe I love too quickly.
Yes. That goes for all of us.
Well,
Mutual.
I don't know if I'm joking, but this is what I'll say. Well, one of the things that we were saying is I don't know how you could isolate variables within political science when you could have two movements coincide, like a violent one and a pacifistic one. And
Okay,
so, like,
Ross, can you give me an example of that?
Like the civil rights movement around black liberation?
No. Oh God.
Yeah, because there like a good example of that was the Birmingham riots of '63 that coincide. I mean, it's not just that; it's just there was dozens of riots throughout the entire '60s. You had militancy within the Nation of Islam and militancy within the Black Panthers,
Ross,
who openly advocated for revolution.
Would you say,
meanwhile, like patrolling police? I mean,
Ross, would you say
What?
that it wasn't just solely based on those riots? I mean, there were an amalgamy of other things happening around the civil rights era, like demonstrations, protests that didn't lead to riots, as well as, just general public discourse. Yeah, the stand-ins in segregated areas.
yeah, but I would say those were secondary.
But they've also
I don't
done
think
the
you can just get your ass
they've
kicked
done
and
the
then, like,
research around
so
like the
sorry for
violent,
you.
like eruptions around that kind of shit. Like that did not lead to positive legislative change.
Say that again.
They have conducted the research around like the violent uprisings around that period of time, and it did not lead to like positive legislative change.
No, what I'm saying is,
Oh
Well,
God.
Well,
What
I
I'm
think one thing about the civil rights movement that's important about the point you bring up, Michael, is that I think the point is that there were all kinds of different things going on. But do we think that it would have been more likely that change would have occurred if it was only the peaceful movements going on.
Yes, it would have been okay. I have a very Chilean counter argument.
Hold on. Just let James.
Oh God.
Just let James finish.
Okay, I want you guys. All right.
I'm finished.
Okay. My bad.
Okay. So there was when I don't know if you guys remember this. There was this OG. Okay, this guy's OG name was Pinochet. He was a Chilean OG, fucking like Latin American OG. Okay, and the thing about this OG is that there were a lot of very protracted, non-violent forms of demonstrations orchestrated against this motherfucker. It wasn't like some women's march shit. These were pretty rigorous, protective movements. Here's the thing though. The armed uprising against Pinochet almost completely disrupted and I guess you could say ruined the chances of getting Pinochet out of government. There was an armed group that attacked the Pinochet motorcade. And Pinochet tried to say, oh, look at this fucking armed movement. They are collaborators of this other movement that's trying to get me out of office. And because this fucking happened, they're the same guys, and you should oppose them because they were trying to be so fucking armed and militant about this. He tried to conflate the armed uprising with the disarmed uprising that was actually more effectual. And it was only because the Pope swooped in and because the international community swooped in that Pinochet and the unarmed democratic process was able to dislodge this guy from his position. This is an example of when an armed uprising undermines and sabotages revolutionary political movements in the modern era. Political movements in the modern era that are comprised of armed uprisings attract more negative attention than sunrise movements, than South Korean 2017 movements, than South Korean 1980s movements, than Latvian 1980s and early 90s movements. Anything you guys can fucking think of.
Let me just add to David's thing, because I can also point to Brazil. There was in the 1930s an attempt by communist army officials to stage a coup that ultimately failed, and it led to a massive retaliation against any type of communist movement, peaceful or otherwise, in that country. It probably played a part later on in that country's history when he wasn't necessarily a socialist, but he was basically Brazil's JFK at the time, to get overthrown in a coup in 1964, and that what led to the junta that ran the country for about 20-odd years. So, I mean, there are seriously implications when you callously decide on this type of revolutionary action, thinking that you're going to be the winners of it. And, I think there isn't enough on your side that I think that really, considers the possibility of what if it doesn't work, and how much of a setback is that going to meet you, as well as other people that may become victims as a result of that. Okay, I'm done.
Ross, is it all right if I tackle this first?
Sure.
So I think there's an assumption that Ross and I are overconfident and that we think that we're going to win and that there's no possibility of failure. And that's not the case. And I would even go so far as to say that we don't want revolution. It's just that we understand that that is the only way to overthrow the ruling class. Just because someone like Pinochet is deposed, which is a great thing, does not mean that the ruling class in the country has been overthrown. In order to overthrow the ruling class and put the means of production in the hands of the workers, it requires a violent revolution, because it necessarily means the ruling class losing their power, losing their resources, their control over the land and the government, which they so furiously cling to and use the state in order to protect. It's, naive to think that we're going to be able to create serious systemic change just from peaceful movements, just because we can depose an incumbent government doesn't mean that we change anything about the class nature of the state or the fundamental foundations of society.
Ross, can I interject for a second? Or James?
Give like just like a 10 or like
Yeah. Go for it, buddy.
Be finite before I'll respond.
Here's the thing. Okay. When it comes to that kind of situation, how can I say this delicately? The most representative and worker cooperative countries in the world, or states in the world, defy everything that you just said. Where it's like places like France, where there's places like Netherlands, where there's places like Japan, where there's places like the United States, those countries tend to be symbolic of the greatest number of like worker cooperatives, and they are not held back by the obstacles that you illustrated.
But that's a great example of how misery's just shifted around. Like ultimately, like they just move. If there's more pro-environmental policies or higher wages or something like that, they just move the factories to the third world, or they hire undocumented people.
No, these are first world countries.
Wait, I want to say this. I was part of Standing Rock. It was a pretty peaceful movement. I mean, it was one-sided peaceful. I mean, a lot of people got their asses kicked. But like Standing Rock, the Chipko movement, the occupation of the Hambach Forest, and then there's this like airport struggle in Japan. All of these ultimately failed. And it's not just because they don't they didn't meet their goals, but the spirit of them failed because they would just move it to Borneo. And if we look at Borneo's, the Chipko movement there was a lot of women that hugged trees to prevent the trees from being chopped down. They just went to Borneo to strip the earth of its trees. It doesn't matter. Capitalism is like a river. You can't just dam it up in one area. It goes in another area. I don't care about the people that we do help with reforms. I care about the people who we don't help with reforms.
But here's the thing: is by not helping people with reforms, what do we condemn them to? And that's basically that we condemn them to
work towards revolution. We need to work towards revolution.
Okay, all right.
Revolution is great. Revolution is amazing. Hold on a second.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. All right.
Okay, here's the thing. When it comes to do we generally agree that worker cooperatives are an equitable and preferable system of organizing our businesses to things like unionization and private ownership and stuff like that? If you guys don't give me a yes or no answer, I'm going to answer the question for you.
I don't think that they're preferable. I think that they act like any other firm. They have to maximize profits in the long run. You know what I mean?
It's not about maximizing profits. It's about distributing profits.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is that when we actually here's the thing about socialism is that it's supposed to distribute the profits that a business accumulates to its workers in a way that's far more equitable, in a way that's far more fair, who actually contributes the most to that business. And when we look at places where worker cooperatives are the most prominent, where worker cooperatives are where they're in the greatest, where they exist the most, they're not in places where there had been attempted socialist or communist revolutions like Russia or China. The greatest number of worker cooperatives exist in places like Brazil. They exist in places like Denmark. They exist in places like Finland. They exist in places like Norway. And to me, that just means what do we have? What's a good way of prioritizing our revolutionary politics? Because the Russians prioritize the Bolshevik method of political revolutionary action, and that failed. I think anybody who has an empirical grasp of history can accept that. And, the Scandinavian countries embrace the methodology of the Mensheviks. And I think that anybody has an empirical grasp of if history is able to accept that as well. And as consequentialists who are willing and able to accept what creates the best outcomes for human beings, It's not a better situation to exist in Eastern Europe than it is to exist in the Scandinavian countries. So I guess in my view, it's pretty decisive. But what do you guys think? Because these preferable goals were not accomplished using violent forms of political action, and violent forms of political action actually negatively predict good outcomes for human beings. How do you guys defend violent forms of political action, even though they negatively predict good outcomes for human beings?
Well, just to clarify, did you say that the Bolsheviks failed at revolution?
No, they failed to create good outcomes for humans.
Good outcomes. Are you saying that's because they reverted back into capitalism, or
more like a centralized form of distributing that kind of thing? Like, can you give me a percentage of how many Russian businesses were worker cooperatives?
So this is what I would say is that there are many quality of life metrics, and there was a recent study. I can put it in the chat, but it's the 28 out of 30 metrics. The Eastern Bloc did better than the capitalist countries, and we have to look at them as a whole. You know what I mean? Because they're part of a larger market. Whereas,
Wait, Ross,
do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
link it now.
You're okay. Yeah. Sure.
Hold on. I mean, I just want to say there is some truth to what Ross is saying, because there was a time when East Germany did have better production than West Germany. Okay, that's just at a microcosm. But let me just say this, because I don't want to like.
Wait, are we talking about within the region of one country?
I think he's talking more about in general, but let's.
I'm talking about like literally like on like a geopolitical scale.
Let's take this back for a second, because I think that the concept of the Eastern Bloc is a phenomenon that was like that happened particularly in their area through the circumstances that they found themselves. They all sprang up after the end of World War II with the help of the Soviet Union. I don't think you're going to see that something like that materialize in this day and age with the world that we live in. Now, this talk of revolution, I think it's flowery language, but like, I guess what I want to hear from
literally did.
I want to hear from the other side, like, how serious do you think the average American is going to be installed with revolutionary fervor in a country that has grown up with about 100 years of anti-communist propaganda and education?
I think you cut out for a second.
Yeah, oh, okay. Sorry. All right. My apologies. So I guess my question is, I'll simplify it.
You're back.
How certain do you think the average American is going to be installed with revolutionary fervor in a country that, you know, has gone through about 100 years of anti-communist propaganda in education? Like, if the system breaks down, do you think that the average American is going to turn to socialism, or are they going to turn to something else, or other people?
Won over to.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you finish. Yeah.
Aren't we Americans?
We're Americans, but are we a small fraction of the political discourse here? Because I know we're all junkies in this sense.
I guess
but
there's two things. I would say that all of us are.
Yeah. Yeah. Go on.
There's two parts. There's two parts to it. One part is like we are agents of history, and we are a product of historical phenomena. So like, you know, when you see communists or even like people who are more left leaning, they're a product of the hatred and distesting of capitalism as it is. The second thing I would say is that, you know, I think a lot of times there are different groups that aren't mobilized enough. Like, you know, a lot of rural poverty, the haulers, you know, the ghettos, the reservations, the undocumented, and the prisoners. You know, I think that you might hear more revolutionary sentiments from them. And the other thing I would say is that I think that if you look at you know, Russia before, you know, when the Tsar was in power, it was a backwater, and there was constant like monarchist bullshit propaganda that was fed down everybody's throat, and it was said in every church. Somehow they managed to have a revolution.
All right. I want to stop with these comparisons. We don't live in Tsarist
the German
Russia.
Navy that was the most conservative of all.
Like,
so I guess what I'm saying is, I think.
All right.
Yes, I understand. I think we have better chances than Tsarist Russia.
But the Bolsheviks were also highly mobilized, and they took over a decade.
Do we think we have better chances than we did back then?
Do you say we have more material power than the Bolsheviks?
I recently saw.
Go on, James.
Yeah, but there were times where they were almost exterminated.
Just go on, James.
Do
you guys understand the concept of naval and air supremacy?
Yeah, you organize within the Navy and the Air Force. Like, what are you talking about?
No, it's like a government. Like, okay, hold on. We're going to talk about this for a second. So, like, even when it came to like El Salvador, they were like one of the first like countries that tried to like revolutionize their proletariat. They were fucking stopped dead in their tracks because like air and naval supremacy just like annihilated them. And that's only become like more like clear and like abundantly the reality as time has fucking gone on. There's like literally almost no chance that an armed proletariat can like contend with like a government's like air and naval supremacy in the modern political era. Like even compared to the 1950s, 60s, or 70s. Like this just like does not happen. And that's why Erica Chenoweth's research, who was like researched 323 revolutionary movements between the 1900s and the early 2010s, literally asserts that 0% of armed uprisings in the modern political era culminate in a democratization of that country, in the usurpation of that incumbent government, and the breaking of the back of the 1%. Good luck contending with a modernized military's air and naval supremacy.
I guess what I would say is it's not just about the Air Force organizing within the Air Force and the Navy. It's also the fact that we can organize the oil workers who like provide the fuel for those.
Okay, give me the success rate for that.
Well, a good example of that is Iran. They organized the oil workers. They were able to have a revolution. Yes, it wasn't the revolution that I agree with, but it was like there was a violent component to it. So I don't understand. Like, if you ignore every example that we give, of course, there's going to be a zero success.
But here's the thing: it's like if we're accepting like violent forms of revolutionary like movements being successful, there's like a 26% chance. But when it comes to like other forms of like protracted like revolutionary movements, it's like a 53% chance. So, like, which one do you favor?
Whichever one brings us to closer to communism, and it doesn't really seem like, within that framework, it says that 0% were able to overturn the 1%.
Yeah.
So they're saying that in Russia and China and Cuba and all those places, they were not able to overturn the capitalist class.
Well, no, here's the thing. They weren't able to overturn that and also maintain democracy. If you guys aren't interested in democracy, then the success rate is 26%. Violent uprisings are 26% successful.
That's democracy means rule of the people. So I don't know, like
it doesn't culminate in that. That usually culminates in a centralization of government. It's not actually ruled by the people. It's just that the armed uprising wins, and then the dictators or like the figureheads take control of the country.
Hold on, can I just?
But when it comes to unarmed uprisings, it's a 53% success rate, which is almost double the success rate of armed uprisings.
Centralization has nothing to do with democracy, David.
Why not?
What do you mean? Like, you can have a completely decentralized or centralized anything, and it can be democratic or not.
Do you think that people should have autonomy or not?
What do you mean? They had democratic procedures within the USSR.
I think people had more.
Okay, no, wait. Do people get to elect their representatives or have any form of
a lot easier than they can here? In East Germany,
what percentage of the USSR was dictated by worker cooperatives?
There was worker cooperatives, but I don't think worker cooperatives are the important part of their democracy. I think it was the fact that It was easier to
Well, where was
a manager in the USSR than it was in America. And not only that,
where was the democracy? Was it in Stalin?
What do you mean, like inside him, like his guts?
Okay, that was funny.
Well, I think there was much more democracy in the workplace under Stalin. I mean, workers were able to hire and fire their managers. You know, they could elect representatives from factories.
No, there were
was that centralized, or was that given to the proletariat at the time? Because what I understand about the USSR is that they actually didn't allow worker cooperatives until the year 1988, which is 3 years before the dissolution of the USSR in 1991. So you had a tremendous period of time. No, I'm going to finish. You had a tremendous period of time where worker cooperatives were not permissible under the USSR. Almost 60 years of time. And
it's like some of their agricultural communes acted similar to co-ops, but that's not. I don't think cooperatives are actually what is important for rule of the people.
Can we do a timeout for a second?
It's equally
important.
Can we do a timeout for a second?
Nutritious food regularly to not.
Okay. Hey. All right. Listen. This is great. And
there's a lot of nutritious food in North Korea.
This is a lot of good
democratized situation.
This is a lot of good history, but in order for us to not keep talking past each other, I want to approach this from a more pragmatic perspective. Like, why can't we do both? Like, I believe in the importance of organizing people, not only in major forms of industry or even the military for that matter, but I do believe it is important to continually engage in our civic life, the civic duties, and part of that is taking part in your society, representing people in government, and then voting. Like, I don't see why this has to be like I don't see why this has to be like a zero-sum game in this matter. That's my point. I think both points right now are being articulated very well, but like it seems like we either have to do this or we have to do this. Like why can't we be more fluid and flexible, determining on the circumstances each individual or groups in this country happen to find themselves in. All right, I'm gonna stop now.
Okay, I just want to start off by saying that I don't care, like, individually, like, what anyone does. If they want to vote, that's fine. But my contention is more so with organizations, like, pushing for people to vote for the Democrats or supporting them in one way or another. Because I think that institutionally links them to the Democratic Party, and that it obfuscates revolution. And, in more extreme cases, when you actually try to work through the Democratic Party or some of these institutions, you end up the goal is always to try and control the Democratic Party from within and make them capitulate to the interests of the workers. But I think what actually happens is that those organizations end up being controlled more by the Democrats and becoming stifled and paralyzed and unable to make meaningful goals that actually bring us closer to communism.
Okay, so would you...
All right, so here's my thing, is that 3 years of worker cooperatives in the USSR does not mean that we have a dictatorship of the proletariat. That's not democratization. About no, Mike, I'm going to finish this.
Okay.
But it's like that's an insane fucking statement. And anybody who tries to pretend that the USSR was actually representing the interests of the workers is fucking insane. But when it comes to mitigating harm with the Democratic Party, I need to remind people of something really quickly. And this is something that we were supposed to talk about a little bit more. There's a clear divide between conservatives and Democrats when it comes to especially things like how to handle the situation in Israel, how to handle the situation with Iran and stuff like that. You have people like Lindsey Graham who are saying I don't need evidence of Hezbollah participating in what happened with a Hamas attack. We're just going to bomb Iran anyways. And you have former secretaries of state within the conservative caucus saying that we're going to bomb them anyways. To me, it seems whether or not we're willing to choose Biden over Trump is whether or not we're willing to accept the expansion of the conflict into other parts of the Middle East. That's all I have to say.
I would say that the Democrats are also voting in favor of silencing people for speaking out against the conflict. And, that to me is building the political infrastructure for fascism. So, it's not like a one-to-one comparison, in my opinion. Like, you can say certain things are better or worse with either one, but we should be protecting both.
Which president ripped up the Iran nuclear agreement?
I mean, that was Trump. But I guess one thing I would say about Biden is that he has got us much closer to nuclear war with, standing up to Russia and Ukraine. And it wasn't really just standing up. It was a constant, the ruling class fist fight of going back and forth. It wasn't, they never just one started it. That's so naive. That's like somebody who believes that is a political child, that they weren't constantly working against each other. There were various missile agreements that the United States ripped up first. You know what I mean? You can talk about the bombing of
wait. Missile agreements. You're talking about missile agreements. Who ripped up those agreements?
I'm saying, though, that there was more of a possibility of nuclear war under Biden, and that would have created less utility. Do you understand that? More suffering.
Wait. Did Biden assassinate Soleimani in Iran?
Yeah, but Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons.
Not.
They don't have nuclear weapons yet. I mean, they're on the path.
I don't.
That was under the Trump administration. Trump ripped up.
The other thing that you can say is that Biden had a higher chance of passing the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and that would have created a lot more suffering than under Trump, because Trump wouldn't have passed.
Was he ever serious about TPP though?
Because free trade hurts people, just like the EU, just like NAFTA.
I get it.
Romanian steel and car companies cannot compete with German car companies. That creates millions of refugees. Same thing with the TPP. And the Biden administration, Obama and Biden underneath the Obama administration supported the TPP.
Well, that was more of Obama's baby than Biden's
with
baby.
With an interesting conundrum that in different avenues with long-term versus short-term suffering, that different politicians create more suffering at different times. What?
I was just saying. Mike,
you're right.
I was just going to comment that TPP was more of Obama's baby than Biden's baby. Biden hasn't really talked about anything about TPP. In fact, Biden in many ways is even more progressive than Hillary Clinton. Take that for what it is. I'm not trying to make that a boast or anything, but the comment, the idea of
statistically more likely to pass Democratic.
I'm hearing comments about bad Democrats, and I don't disagree with that. But my response to that is that yes, there are bad Democrats, but there are no good Republicans. And I think disengagement from the political process because you don't like every Democrat is nothing more than a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, that's not profound. I mean, if you disengage from electoralism, thinking that it won't save you, and then it ends up not, saving you, well then, poo on you. I mean, there was. I heard the silence about I take it that was the censoring of Rashida Tlaib, and yes, there were Democrats that voted for that, but every Republican voted for it. So I don't think it's beneficial to allow what we have in terms of a progressive policy to disintegrate under political apathy.
Almost all the.
No, I have to look at the list again, but I'm pretty sure Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, I think even AOC, for that matter, did not vote to favor censoring Rashida Tlaib. In fact, I think there was only one Republican that I think censored, that voted against censoring.
Well, and he's a Nazi. I believe there were actually some Republicans that. Yes.
Sure. There was here's the thing: it's I think another thing that's important to try to grasp, and it's that when one party's in power, what's the most expected outcome. And so we have a very clear indication of what Republicans want with Iran. Lindsey Graham said he didn't need evidence of Iran's involvement in the Hamas attack to justify a war with Iran. He wants to bomb Iran's oil infrastructure immediately. You have people like Morgan Ortagus, a former State Department official, who says that when Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran chant death to Israel, they also chant death to America, which is basically like, a statement of intent when it comes to warmongering and that kind of thing. Let's make this for contrast. When Biden says that there's no clear evidence that Iran had any involvement in the attack on October 7th, and when you also have people like Senator Cruz, who are especially critical of Joe Biden for wanting to re-engage in the Iran nuclear deal by exchanging hostages. Republicans don't believe in the Iran nuclear deal, even though Iran was complying with the parameters and the conditions and the requirements of nuclear disarmament. And Trump ripped that up in 2018. And he also assassinated an Iranian general. These are clear escalations. And anybody who has a grasp of geopolitical politics understands that a war with Iran would have a far more catastrophic humanitarian cost than the Iraq war did, if only by virtue that Iran has a multiplicity of 3 times the population that Iraq did. So for me, it's like, the difference between a Biden presidency and a Donald Trump presidency is how many more people do you want to die?
I guess what I would say is
like
I
literally
agree with
what it comes down
that the Iran war would be worse than an Iraq war, but I would think a war with Russia would be even more worse than.
But how realistic is a war with Russia going to be?
I think nuclear holocaust is something that creates so many negative utils that it
like, I mean, this is
you know what an expected value
is.
You multiply the amount of suffering for the utils.
Sure, but how realistic was a war with Russia versus how realistic was a war with the Soviet Union?
Negative utils that it's still.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
I think there was a pretty realistic chance that we could have gone to war with Russia, like 1-2%.
Ross, how much nuclear? Here's the difference. How much nuclear war have we had with Russia under Biden?
I mean, if you're just because it doesn't have a precedent, that doesn't mean that it can't happen.
You could argue
but who's more inflammatory about that kind of rhetoric? Like, you have somebody like Donald Trump who's like literally just like saber rattling against North Korea, like assassinating Iranian generals, who's ripping up nuclear agreements with Iran. And I'm not saying that, Ron, to make you feel bad about it.
Is to organize industrial workers, because ultimately they're the ones who control the flow of these resources to the war machine, and that's more important than any of this. Like,
but
you want to
have
your hand into deciding whether to bomb one hospital or another, or build one hospital for every 3 you bomb, or 5 every. This is like, workers hate this. They hate politicians. Most workers hate politicians, and they hate politics for this reason, because they're slimy bastards. They don't have any integrity whatsoever. And we should follow it down that rabbit hole of wormy bullshit,
But here's the thing, Ross. I 1000% agree with that. You're amazingly correct, and you articulate that beautifully and persuasively. But it comes down to which person is going to cause more people to die. And as much as I agree with your sentiment, as much as I agree with how you're conveying this, to me, Trump is, goddamn, he's a multiplicity of bullshit.
Also, consider the fact that maybe you want to choose the person that is also going to benefit your own politics.
As I believe.
I feel like,
Yeah, go on, James.
I don't think that Biden is necessarily going to benefit our own politics.
Will Trump?
I don't think either of them will. And that's why we say that we shouldn't support either. We should criticize them both equally and try to mobilize people for revolution.
Do you think labor organizing has been better under Biden or under Trump?
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, go first. Go first.
Sorry, do I need to repeat myself? Do you think labor organizing has been better under Biden or under Trump due to the recent labor reform laws that were passed?
I don't think that.
Mm-hmm. I really hate this fucking delay. I'm sorry, guys. This is why I feel like this is a 2v1 on David.
I'm not entirely sure, but I would say Biden voted against Biden voted against the road workers strike.
Let James talk.
Yeah,
Say what you're gonna say.
Yeah,
Biden voted against the rail workers strike, and then not only that, but like during the UAW strike, I mean, there was all kinds of like, press tactics of him like going to the strikes to try and make it look like he was some kind of like labor president, but like, I mean, Trump did the same shit, he went over there and tried to have his own thing too. I mean, both of these like politicians are going to try and act like they are like, the working class, like politician that supports the working man. But I mean, all of that is just a way to get votes,
okay.
I mean, they don't actually care.
Hold on,
because James, you're really correct.
I have
when
to
it comes to
press
like
that,
the grand scope. Can I say this a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
Me? Okay. I just wanted to say.
Go ahead, Mike.
That.
Go for it.
Okay, I'm not because I'm not disagreeing either.
No, you please go, Mike.
I don't.
Final statement.
I don't rule Biden as a perfectionist, but the point I was trying to make that his appointments of labor secretaries that allowed for better rulings for easier labor organizing. You don't see that as a benefit. You don't see that how socialists can utilize that. And would it be better if it was under Trump, who would be antagonistic toward those things?
It will probably help facilitate like bargaining between labor unions and the ruling class. But I think the thing is like when you formalize those types of relationships, you take away the radical militant aspects of those organizations. Unions were much more radical before the introduction of the National Labor Relations Act. Now it's just become a process of like, unions becoming these bureaucratic machines that don't always act in the interests of the workers. I mean, there are times when unions push for reforms that actually go against what the rank and file want, So, I mean, I don't think just because like the relationship is more formalized necessarily means that it will produce greater outcomes.
But that wasn't.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's
David.
all right.
Go ahead.
Agree with a lot of that. This is the thing when it comes to me talking with Ross.
No, go ahead, David.
Oh no, but it's like here's the interesting thing about Ross, James, myself, and you, Mike, which is that I think that each one of us feels like on a moral imperative, we require much more militant and I guess you could say rigorous forms of union action. And we have like a very anemic presence of unionization in the United States. One important distinction to make is that under Biden, with some of like the legislation that was passed, unions are able to retroactively activate themselves, which is that if any company, in the past, several decades of time, tried to stand in the way of unionization, then basically their overtures to impede unionization is overturned. And that's not something that we've seen since Lyndon B. Johnson. That's not something we've seen since FDR. That's not some Obama shit. That's not some Clinton shit. That's not even stuff that Mondale or Dukakis were campaigning for. That's some New Deal Democrat shit. And that's only presented itself under Biden as milquetoast and as unremarkable as he is. And then you also have things where, he raised the minimum wage for government employees, and that positively benefited their livelihoods for about 300,000 people, I think. And that's something that Obama would have never touched during his time. So I think that if people are willing to be impartial, then the only conclusion they can come to is that Biden has been more sympathetic to the working class than any Democratic president has been since Carter. And I think that's empirically true, based on the metrics, based on what could be quantified. If somebody was to ask, what's that?
The Palestinians are part of the working class.
Well, the Palestinians are
I
fucked
agree with
regardless if Trump or
as well.
Biden is in office, so
Yeah,
I would
I don't
not
disagree
exclude
with that.
them.
True. And when it comes down to and like this is what's interesting about that dialogue tree is, do you want conservatives to place that humanitarian cost on a wider regional basis than the Democrats would? Lindsey Graham wants to include Hezbollah in the IDF Hamas conflict. They thirst for it. John McCain fucking sang "Bomb, Bomb, Bomb Iran" to the tune of the Beach Boys in 2008. Conservatives want this to expand, and conservatives understand that the humanitarian cost of involving Iran will be exponentially greater than what we witnessed in Iraq.
Well, I guess
This
what
is
I would
not
say
something-
is that your vote doesn't matter as much because of gerrymandering, because of political machines, because of like various components of geopolitics.
But is it nothing?
It's absurd to think like that California isn't going to go blue, or Idaho isn't going to go red, or Ohio isn't going to go red. There are specific reasons that Maryland, like, I just don't understand why we have this fixation. It's just like we were taught to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day. Of course, we were also taught to vote. We get most reforms through militancy.
Yeah, I understand. It's like, but are we willing to condemn so many?
Or tertiary, or like I think survey that's designed to find the best way to rule the workers and placate them. You know what I mean? I care more about class consciousness than utilities. I want to get people to understand to revolt, not to be like complacent sheep. You know what I mean?
But here's the thing, Ross. Are you willing to condemn so many more lives just for staking that posture?
I'm just saying that your vote doesn't matter to begin with.
No, wait. But I'm trying to indicate that, like, with a conservative supermajority, you might be condemning many more people to a bad outcome, just so that you get to oppose Democrats. Is that worth it to you?
That's not what it's about. It's about building a revolution, because that's the only thing that can save the working class.
All right, but how many revolutions have we had?
We live in a world where there's
Yeah.
Okay, let's think about it this way. Say the Democrats create a marginally better world, right?
All right.
But we still have to live in a world where the living envy the dead. Like,
right.
what kind of utility is that? That doesn't make any sense. You're trying to say, okay, what if we die over 80? Say we have a climate change disaster and people die. 60% of the population dies out in 100 years versus 65%, right?
I know. But here's the thing, Ross. We have 700,000 dead Iraqi civilians. How many revolutions have we had in America because of that? Revolution does not correspond to humanitarian. No, just 1 second. Revolution does not correspond to humanitarian cost. We can completely abominate an entire region of people and still not mount an effective revolution. There's a possibility that we will elect somebody who will.
Yeah.
Relation. Oh. We have no precedent to establish that that's what's going to be like. What that's what inspires or provokes a revolution. The precedents we have is that we don't have revolutionary action, even when we literally kill 700,000 Iraqi civilians. I don't think that there's a correlative situation with that.
I think we should have closing statements.
Yeah.
I want to say something real quick in response to what you're saying, because, one of the important things about this potential war with Iran or Ukraine or Russia is that the U.S. is currently a declining global empire. We're not in the same position that we were with Iraq. There's a good chance that if we go to war with these countries, Russia and China are going to get involved, and we're going to lose our influence. A lot of people are going to change sides, and there's going to be a lot of commotion, and we're going to be put into a vulnerable position. That's usually when people become the most radical, is when they start losing a war. there is a good reason to believe that this will create opportunities to organize for revolution. It's not the same situation as past, imperialist wars that we've been involved in. It's more of an inter-imperialist rivalry.
Do we want to do closing statements now?
Do we want to how about do we want to do the opposite of what we did like the big starting opening?
Sure.
How do we want? We can also flip another coin.
David goes first, and then
yes,
I go. Okay, that's fine. Okay.
I said 11, so.
Okay. Yeah, my bad. Sorry to keep you late.
Okay. So basically, I'm good.
Well, I would go second after that.
Okay, so basically, I'm going to basically stick to the research that I'd accumulated. Violent forms of revolutionary. If we were to superimpose these success rates onto something like, say, like COVID vaccines, non-violent forms of revolutionary political action have a 53% success rate. Violent forms of political action have a 26% success rate. Think about which option you would want to inoculate your sick grandmother with. There's no reason why you should favor the violent form of revolutionary political action, unless you're LARPing about Maoism or the Haitian Revolution, which you cannot reasonably or sensibly superimpose onto contemporaneous political politics. When it comes to the climate change situation, Republicans are deeply committed to creating more harm. Biden has tried to get us back into the Paris Agreement. Biden has tried to get us back into the Iranian denuclearization program. He's tried to establish some kind of peaceability in that region, and I just don't think that there's any kind of empirical justification for what people are trying to advocate for, as far as the opposition is concerned. And I think that's been clearly demonstrated throughout this conversation. If anybody has any qualms with that, then just refer to how incapably they were able to answer questions that were posited to them.
So does that mean
Ross is next? Ross, or
yeah, I can go next. I guess what I would say is before the revolution, it is conceived. Yes, I think you're still suffering from lag, Mike.
Fuck my ass,
and it wouldn't
dude.
surprise me if it was the entire time. But
God damn it!
I'll start. Before the revolution, it is conceived as impossible.
I'm sorry.
Okay, let me finish.
I'm sorry.
Please let me finish. Before the revolution, it is conceived as impossible. But after a revolution, it is considered inevitable. I think that it's important to understand that we can organize in the military and adjacent to it. I think that it's important to also understand that political science is not that much of a science. It's, I also see a lot of errors in nutrition. There's a lot of misinformation that's promoted by sugar companies and the meat industry. And, of course, liberal institutions are going to produce liberal results. I think that that the best reforms historically were from the most militant organizing. And I think that we need to maintain our integrity and criticize the Democrats for the scumbags that they are, the genocidal scumbags that they are. We need to organize independent of them because they actively try to destroy us. Do not forget that the Democrats were responsible for the MOVE bombing, the Vietnam War, the Afghan War. They were very involved in that. They have contempt for the people, and they're actively trying to kill us. And kill us as a working class. We need to have solidarity with working class people all over the world. And I think a lot of times people forget, about, whether we're talking about people in Somalia with the war, various droning and the Bill Clinton's war against Somalia. I mean, that's not here nor there, but it just in general, there's so much suffering that goes on in the name of supposedly lesser evilism when it's the entire system. Reform has been going at it for hundreds of years, and we are exactly where we are because of it. We're in a climate catastrophe. You know, we need to actively fight it through revolution, and that is the only way to save the human race.
Is it me? All right.
Would you like to go, Mike, or shall I?
I'll go. I'll try and be quick about this. So I know James talked about opportunity with the potential future conflict should Republicans take control, but I think opportunity already presents itself in the fact that we have the opportunity to grow our labor force in this country. Again, I think revolution is nice to talk about, but when you're actually implementing it, it becomes quite nasty. And I think we all need to consider the implications and feasibility of not saying that a revolution isn't possible, but in terms of a socialist revolution, really gauging the possibility here and now in a country that feeds its population, over 100 years of anti-communist and anti-propaganda and education. That's something to consider. People may be disgruntled with the current system as it erodes itself through internal contradiction, but the real question is, what are they going to turn to as an alternative? Do you think they're all going to turn to socialism, or are they going to be more susceptible for something far worse that's going to put all of us on this panel at greater risk for our own lives? That's something that I don't take callously, and I deeply, seriously consider when I make my decisions. You're right, voting isn't everything, but it's not nothing. It does show a sense of solidarity in the most minute sense. For you to stand back and allow more nefarious and cruel people to take control of government that will be perpetrators of persecution against the trans community, for existence, for people of color in general. The fact that if you abstain from that, thinking that you have a moral superior stance to that, I think is laughable. What is it? Those who do nothing, are just as bad. Is that the saying? I don't really know. Sorry, it's late. But I'm not saying that organizing workers in the industries and in your communities in general isn't bad. I don't want to make the case that I was ever against that. I'm also just not against doing some of the easiest things that you can do is just go vote on election day. Like, seeing is believing for a lot of people, and I think we need to kind of step out of our political bubbles, and we have to kind of make understanding to people who aren't as so politically savvy as all four of us here. And, you do that by making a connection through them, whether that's, being a favor of a policy or running for office yourself, or, showing the human implications of, their political outlooks. I mean, all these things matter, and it's going to be a collective effort. This can't be done by one person, but my position has always been that, we use every tool available to us. So, the thing that I jokingly referred to during the 2020 election was, Biden for time. And I still think that that's true. We have opportunities to really grow our movement. So we don't have to worry about what Ross says and being so dependent on the Democrats. We can have an institutional structure that will challenge that power. But that also means that we need to really engage at the political system for what it is right now. And that also means not just voting, but also engaging in electoral reform. But that's a state by state basis, but we have to support each other in that outreach. And for that, I yield. Okay, James, take it away.
Are you finished, or did you
I am finished. Out? Yes, go ahead.
All right. Okay. So I guess I would like to start off by bringing up Project 2025. I'm sure that you guys are probably familiar with it. If you're not, it's basically a conservative manifesto that was written and funded by conservative think tanks who basically outlined a plan to centralize power under a conservative president by using the executive power of the president. This is something that began sort of with Reagan, like using more of the president's executive power to like bypass, Congress and things like that. But the interesting thing is that because they're using this framework of centralizing power using, executive means through the president, they've kind of got like a somewhat legal way outlined of doing this. And the thing is like the liberals historically, I mean, whether you're talking about like in the United States or even back, during the rising up of fascism in Italy and Germany, they always try to first play by the rules when it comes to fighting fascism, by trying to fight it in the electoral arena, telling people to vote. And the problem with that is that fascists don't play by the rules a lot of the times, but when they do and they find loopholes to sort of get their power, like for example, like Hitler not being elected in Germany, but the person that was elected appointed him as chancellor, So they use these ways to get into power, and the liberals end up capitulating to it. And there's good reason to believe that if a conservative president is to be elected and they use this method of centralizing power, that, the liberals are not going to have any way to fight back because they're not thinking about like militant organizing, and in a lot of those instances, like in Germany and Italy, a lot of the liberals simply just accepted it when the fascists took power. The actual people in government oftentimes didn't change. And another thing I want to say is that because of that, it means that we should be focused even more on militant organizing and trying to fight for revolution, because we know that we're not going to be able to fight fascism. The only thing that can really stop fascism is communism. And I also want to say, like we keep bringing up like Russia and China and saying that we can't superimpose those things. I think it's important to understand that we are part of a historical process, transitioning from one mode of production to another. Just like it took capitalism hundreds of years and several failed projects in order to transition out of feudalism, it's also going to take lots of experiments for us to be able to transition out of capitalism. And Russia and China and Cuba and all of these other revolutions are all experiments that we have to look back on and learn from. When Russia had their revolution, they were looking back on the Paris Commune as an example. When China had their revolution, they were looking back on the Russian Revolution as an example. And even the Haitian Revolution was inspired by the American and French revolutions to have theirs. So it's not crazy to think that we can't look back at these revolutions and learn from them and see what worked and what didn't. And of course, we disagree on like whether or not Russia and China actually brought liberation to the workers or workers' power. So of course we're going to disagree on that basis. And that's part of us having a different plan for how to get there. But I would say that in all of those experiments, while they ultimately reverted back to capitalism, they experienced great successes. Workers' lives were improved after the revolutions from, what they experienced before. And, it's inevitable that we are going to have our own experiments, and we may fail and we may, win. but that will be for history to decide. So
James, I would like
that's
to
all I have.
debate you about the trajectory of fascism in Italy sometime.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to debate.
Also, in general, I mean, Ross, James, thanks for coming
I think
on.
I'm gonna go.
Yeah, if you got to
dare
go.
to struggle, dare to win, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah. I know Ross has to go. I was keeping him late, but I want you guys back. I'm sorry about my delay.
You're welcome. But the last thing I'll say is just look into the Progressive Labor Party, look into organizing.
Did you want to share a link?
Yeah. The last thing I'll just say is look into the Progressive Labor Party and look into organizing in general. Yeah, I'll share a link. Can I just send it to you?
Yeah,
I really do want to go.
That's fine. I'm sorry, Ross, for keeping you late.
Here, I'll send a link.
Okay, cool.
PLP.
I'll put it in the chat.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little frazzled right now. Here, let's see if I can. Here, I'm sending it in the chat to the stream room.
Oh.
And I will also put it in the general.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Peace.
All right.
I'll see you guys later.
Bye, Ross.
Bye. Oh.
All right.
Thank you. Mike, if you're equally receptive, I would not mind providing research about which forms of revolutionary political action results in better outcomes. 53% nonviolent unarmed uprising success rates, base as hell. 26%.
Wait, nobody talk. I have to restart the Discord.